The 16th staging of the Motul Czech Rounds. Formerly held in Brno since 2021, it's had its home in the shadow of the Ore Mountains at the Autodrom Most. World SBK has just signed a new 5-year contract that will keep us here until at least 2030. But before we look ahead, there's one more race to complete, round 5 of the 2025 campaign. The Autodrom Most became the country's first permanent race circuit upon its completion in 1983 on reclaimed former coal mining land. The layout is largely flat with a maximum gradient of 3%. 3 clear overtaking zones, the first a real action hotspot. At the end of a 792-metre straight, the riders stopped to just 65 km/h for turn 1. The highest brake pressure of the season, according to Brembo. This is where Toprak Razgatlioglu made his moves from 3rd to 1st to win last year's Superpole race, and his pass on Nicolo Bullica, of course, to win race 1 yesterday. From there, the circuit snakes back on itself, a number of bends just 12 metres wide and the overtaking opportunities limited until we reach the northern side of the circuit and turn 15 under the arch. The largest number of corners on any track we visit with 21, and the last of our big braking zones isn't until the penultimate corner, turn 20. Remy Gardner, the man to watch through there last year. We also remember Toprak Razgatlioglu's last lap pass on Scott Redding from 2021. Razgatlioglu set a new lap record this morning, little more than 1/10 of a second from the outright lap record. One final chance for Nicolo Bullica to claim his first ever Czech round win this weekend. He's led 6 laps over 2 races, but has been second throughout to Toprak Razgatlioglu overall. This morning's Tissot Superpole race proved Bullica has not found enough overnight to go with Toprak, and in view of his physical condition, the last race of 3 this weekend could be another damage limitation ride. Steve English alongside me, 2 identical podiums so far, and whilst there might be a little bit of change among those 4 Ducatis from 2nd to 5th on the grid, there's no doubt that it's Toprak Razgatlioglu whose bare expectation here is to win race 2.
Yeah, what we've been able to see from Toprak all the way through this weekend has been the speed and consistency that was expected of him coming here to Most. But this is a place where he needs to make sure he's able to come away with all 3 race victories. A 26-point deficit in the championship to Nicolo Bullica. He knew coming here that he needed to take the pole position, win the first 2 races, and now move into the final race of the weekend and a chance for another 25 points.
2 races very similar to one another thus far. Nicolo Bullica led the first 4 laps in race 1, and this morning's Superpole race he led for the first 2, answering back when Razgatlioglu came through, only to ultimately lose out. 2-second winning margin for Bullica in the for Razgatlioglu rather in the Superpole race. It was a 6-second win yesterday in race 1. Danilo Petrucci completing the podium in both of those races, but different look between from 4th positions down. Alex Lowes took 4th in race 1. It was Sam Lowes 4th in the Superpole race, just about holding on from Alvaro Bautista, while Alex Lowes dropped back to 7th position, also passed by Iker Lecuona. So those positions 4 to 7 have been changing around this weekend so far, but no change in the podium spots from race 1 to the Superpole race, and indeed on the grid. Same top 3 in Superpole race 1, Tissot Superpole race, and now on the grid for race 2 this afternoon. Toprak Razgatlioglu, the dominant force this weekend so far, has been able to pull back 5 points on Nicolo Bullica in race 1, 3 points in the Tissot Superpole race. The target for him is to win another here, and that guarantees he pulls back at least another 5. The gap at present, 26 points to Bullica.
It really is important for Toprak. The longer race, though, could be one of those factors where Bullica, after the crash on Friday, it comes back to him a little bit. If Petrucci's able to make a step forward, if Bautista's able to find something from the 2nd row of the grid, there's no guarantees that it will be Bullica that will be the closest challenger to Toprak.
Pit lane just about to open for the riders to make their way towards the starting grid. Nicolo Bullica, your championship leader, 26 points ahead of Toprak Razgatlioglu. 2 second places for Bullica this weekend so far. His 50th race start earlier on today, and he's been a hat-trick winner in Australia and Italy himself. a hat-trick of second places in Portimao, and as it stands, looking good for another trio of second places here this afternoon. The key man who might make a difference in your top three, Alvaro Bautista. Bautista was 5th in race 1 and 5th in the Superpole race, had a lot of misfortune yesterday afternoon, came back strong in the closing laps. And again, a bit of a sluggish start on the opening 2 laps of the Superpole race, but worked through well in the end. And Bautista, as I say, could be the main difference. Instead of starting 10th, this time he's up in P5.
Yeah, what we've seen from Alvaro this weekend is that he really does look like he's combative and trying to ride as hard as he can on that Ducati V4R. It's just been a challenge for him here this weekend, but second row of the grid for this race.
Bautista making his way out onto the circuit, currently 3rd in the World Championship behind Nicolo Bulliger and Toprak Razgatlioglu. No change to the top 3 places on the grid from Superpole to this to race 2 this afternoon. Toprak Razgatlioglu victorious from pole in the Superpole race earlier on today, ahead of Nicolo Bulliger and Danilo Petrucci. Sam Lowe should have been 4th, but had his fastest lap time deleted for yellow flag infringement in the Superpole session. He's had to climb twice from P9 from his original starting position, made it up to 6th yesterday. He will be on the second row of the grid here, having finished the Superpole race in 4th. Alvaro Bautista qualified down in 10th. He's also gained 5 places and up to P5. Iker Lecuona loses 1 down to 6th. Alex Lowes loses 3 down to 7th. Xavi Vierge, important for him, moves up from the 5th row of the grid and onto the 3rd row, finishing 8th in that Superpole race. Andrea Locatelli up 2 places, last of those points-paying finishes in the Superpole race, and just denying Jonathan Rea by a couple of tenths of a second. So Rea back on the 5th row of the grid again here. Yeah,
it really was tough for Johnny because he's made good starts in both races, but just didn't have that pace at the end of it, and that's where Lockett came through on him. But it's such a knife edge that the riders are on in the 10-lap Tissot Superpole race, just because if you end up in that 9th position or and those final laps trying to battle your way back into the point-paying position, it really does make a big difference. And unfortunately for Rea, he's going to come from that 5th row of the grid instead of starting on the 3rd row like his teammate.
So, top 3 hasn't changed throughout the weekend. Unlikely you'd expect that the top man changes, because Toprak Razgatlioglu has been the track specialist here in Most throughout this circuit's inclusion since 2021 in the World SBK calendar. He scored a hat-trick here last season. He scored a hat-trick in Portimao at the start of this campaign, and he looks good for a second hat-trick this weekend in Most. 2 wins out of 2, 6-second winning margin in race 1, 2-second winning margin this morning in the 10-lap sprints.
Yeah, and for Toprak, you can see down there just chatting to his crew chief Phil Maher, and everyone looks pretty relaxed down at BMW as well after the start of the weekend.
Second on the grid will be Nicolo Bulliger, and as I said, 2 second places for him, doing exactly the job he needs to, the job that he did in Portimao, the job that Toprak did in Cremona. It's been a seesaw season so far, with one rider with a hat-trick and then the other answering back, and that might well continue here this afternoon.
Yeah, Nico clearly doesn't want any distractions down on the grid as well. Helmet's on, he's focused on what job he has to do.
Completing the front row of the grid will be Danilo Petrucci. He's joined those 2 on the podium in both races thus far. And 2 third positions. It was a decent haul of points last time out at the Italian round, but if he gets up into the top 5 again here this afternoon, it's going to be his best haul of points this season so far. Most has always been a venue that he very much enjoys, so expect to see him towards the front here as we see Toprak Razgatlioglu pick up another watch. It is his 3rd Tissot Superpole race victory in the last 4. It's always one of his strengths.
Yeah, and Toprak doesn't have any weaknesses now at this stage, and BMW certainly have been able to give him the bike that he needs this weekend. Whether they're able to do that at Misano for the next round and for the rest of the summer remains to be seen. But this weekend we're getting a real glimpse of the Toprak that we saw last year as well.
Second row of the grid will be Sam Lowes, Alvaro Bautista and Iker Lecuona. And for Sam, as I said at the top of the programme, hamstrung somewhat by the yellow flag situation. He had posted a lap that would have been good enough for P4, but the rules are the rules. Down to 9th position on the grid originally. He climbed up to 6th place in race 1 and then 4th place in the Super Pole race. So Sam Lowes, you'd expect to be a podium contender here.
Yeah, he should be, and certainly he's going to have his hands full with Bautista behind him, but there are two riders that will expect to contend up against Petrucci.
Early laps could be the risk for Alvaro Bautista. Yesterday, of course, he was collected by Andrea Locatelli, who went down, and Bautista in a 3 abreast situation going into turn 2. There wasn't much he could have done differently, but he had qualified down the order in P10. Now he's a little bit closer to the front. Best chance of the weekend for him to get back on the podium.
And that's what he could have done differently, qualify better. He made a mistake on his fast lap, and that's what dropped him down the order and put him in those risky positions on the opening lap yesterday.
We come back to Danilo Petrucci. He always likes to be among the last riders to settle in, just walking around on the grids, but here he is. We found him up in 3rd place. So Petrucci, that's where he's finished in both races so far. It was a little bit tougher for him, I would suggest, in the Super Pole race than it was in race 1, where it was a rather lonely affair for Petrucci.
Yeah, it really was. He had a big gap in front, a big gap behind, and I'd imagine that for race 2 this afternoon it's going to be a different set of circumstances. The one thing is, in World SBK at the moment, if you qualify well and you get away at the front early in the race, it does give you that big advantage potentially.
3rd row of the grid will feature Alex Lowes, Xavi Vierque and Andrea Locatelli. This is Alex Lowes, who put in a season's best 4th place, best result yet with Bimota in race 1. Did tumble back a little in the latter stages of the Tissot Super Pole race. So having originally qualified in 4th, he's now going to go from the 3rd row of the grid.
Yeah, and that's right in that danger zone for all these riders, because it's at that point where everyone's fast, but everyone ends up in the scrap with one another. So Lowes will be worth keeping an eye on, particularly in those early laps. He's made fast starts in both races this weekend.
Back to complete the 2nd row of the grid with Iker Lecuona, originally qualified in 7th place, and in 5th place rather, finished 7th place in race 1 and 6th in the Super Pole race. His teammate Xavi Vierque will be lining up just behind him on the 3rd row of the grid from 8th position. Vierque was 9th in race 1 and 8th in the Super Pole race. So back-to-back top 10 finishes. Lecuona's been a little bit further up the road. National anthem of the Czech Republic, and a beautiful rendition as well. Liam, down to you on the grids.
Thank you very much, Alex. Well, got Alex Lowes here on the front of the 3rd row of the grid. We just saw speaking to your brother Sam there. What was the game plan between you two? Is there you got your unison as you have been for most of the weekend?
I've obviously been starting from 4th position this weekend, so I just talking about the start. Look at the crowds over the map, distance as well. Yeah, just a plan. It's a long race around here, and yeah, the start of this first, let's say, section of corners really dictates the race, especially from another row further back from me. So yeah, obviously really enjoying the bike this weekend. We need to try to stay ahead of the group rather than get swallowed up by the group. We've got a bike that's very good for battling at the minute, but yeah, hopefully can have a good start. Use the pace that I've got this weekend.
Yeah, talking of the pace, Bimota and yourself have been working really well around here in Most. What is the game plan? What do you think you can achieve today? Can another top 5 be possible?
Yeah, it depends on the start. I think I can be strong the whole race. I'm feeling good on the bike. The bike's good on these tyres. I need good track position. If I'm there on lap 10, 11, I think I can keep good strong pace to the end. So yeah, the second and third sector on the track were really strong and competitive. We missed a bit in the first and last sector, which makes it hard to pass guys and easy to get past. So that's what we need to think about during the race.
Alex, all the best for the race.
Cheers, mate.
So back to the grid then, completing the third row. We've got Andrea Locatelli, retirement from him in race number 1, and ninth place, importantly, in the Superpole race to get him up onto the third row. For Remy Gardner, originally qualified in 6th place, and he didn't have much of a chance to use it, did he? Because he had a penalty ride through that neutralised him in race 1, and then 15th in the Superpole race, so he drops down now to 10th position. Jari Montella, and he will be starting from 11th on the grid, and completing that 4th row will be Garrett Gerloff.
Yeah, and been good to see Gerloff have a better performance on that Kawasaki so far this weekend. Montella has been able to do a decent job as well, qualified well in the Superpole session to be up there in the 3rd row of the grid.
As we see the president of the Czech Republic garbed out in World SBK waistcoat. I suspect he's going to get trackside with his own personal camera. It's great to see his enthusiasm for the sport and the championship.
Yeah, President Pavel absolutely loves it, and I'm sure that for him it's going to be a good experience to get himself out there with the rest of the photographers and be able to come back with something special.
Yes, I'm sure we could have sent him some, but this won't be the same as his own, I'm sure. Let's continue on through the grid. Getting distracted, Steve. Row 4, Remy Gardner, Jari Montella and Garrett Gerloff. Gerloff's best weekend yet with Kawasaki, and starts 12th again here. That's where he finished in the Superpole race. The results aren't a huge amount better, only 1 place better yesterday in race 1 than his previous best this season, but the pace has been. He was close to the tail of Jonathan Rea, just second behind, and never very far away from the top 10. This is the 5th row of the grid. Axel Bassani, Jonathan Rea, the aforementioned, and Michael van der Mark. Bassani 12th in race 1, 18th in the Superpole race. This has been a weekend where the balance has shifted back in favour of Alex Lowes, who has certainly had the upper hand over his teammates
Double
here.
long lap penalty this morning really did impact Bassani. He made a good start and was one of a few riders caught with a jump start over the course of the week and so far.
Yes, also had a bit of ill luck yesterday with a front brake problem in race 1, Axel Bassani. So let's hope he gets a clear run of fortune here. Alongside him on row number 5, Jonathan Rea. 2 good jumps, so watch out for him on that opening lap. Both races have ended in 10th place finishes. His first points of the season in race 1 yesterday, only just missed out on adding another in the Superpole race this morning. Michael van der Mark, totally anonymous weekend from him, and somewhat surprisingly so as well. Obviously had the crash yesterday in the very early stages, so we didn't get to see the best of him, and he has a second chance here. 6th row of the grid for Bahattin Sofoğlu, Scott Redding and Ryan Vickers. Sofoğlu with a point first time out, despite having to serve a long lap penalty for corner cutting at turn 1. Still managed to beat his teammate Tito Rabat by 2 places. That's his first job completed.
Yeah, and they're looking pretty relaxed with Chan Chu on the grid as well. And for Bahattin, it's been another decent weekend for him, and scored 8 points yesterday and came away with a 16th this morning. So he's in and around that scrap for the final points paying positions.
Scott Redding with 14th place in race 1, 14th in the Superpole race. It's not where he or Ducati anticipated that he would be on his return to the manufacturer, and tough times at the moment for him and Bonova. Just putting points on the board is the target here, and considering he was so brilliant on his first 2 visits to Most, that's a real disappointment and a bit of a shame as well. Ryan Vickers, 16th place, just missed out on the points by 1 position in race 1 yesterday by about 3.5 seconds. 17th in the Superpole race. For these riders further down the order, it's always pretty unlikely that they're going to make it into those lead spots. Rest of the grid completed by Dominic Egerter, Tito Rabat and Taz McKenzie on row 7, and then Zakwan Zaidi on row number 8 completes your 22 rider field. Back down to the grid then with Liam Hodgins.
Thanks very much, Alice. Yeah, just standing here with Stefano Ciccone, team principal of Aruba Ducati. We're just talking about the weather. It's getting really cold and really dark dark down here. However, how's Nicolo feeling ahead of this race after what's been a really strong weekend despite the injury?
Yeah, he has to keep strong because the pain on the heel is strong, and he cannot rely on the full force of the legs for the whole race. So he has to rely more on the arms. I don't know if it can last until the very last lap, so we hope so.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing him challenge at Toprak. But talking of Alvaro as well, starting from the middle of the second row, it's been more of a difficult weekend for Alvaro, but strong pace towards the end of the race. Do you expect him to be up there fighting for the top three?
Yeah, unlucky so far, both in qualifying and race one with the contact at the first turn. But I think he has the pace to step on the podium.
Well, we look forward to the race. Thank you very much, Stefano.
Thank you.
Here is Tito Rabat on the 7th row of the grid. We've already picked up Dominic Egerter, who was 13th yesterday in race one. A little bit of good fortune even for him to get in the points, so really miserable at the moment for Egerter. 17th for Tito Rabat in race one. Taz McKenzie didn't take the start yesterday afternoon, so long race here, an opportunity for him to add to his points tally, but he's had a couple of spills this weekend already, and Zakwan Zaidi has made it onto the grid here, partially aided by Toprak Razgatlioglu losing his fastest time in the Super Pole session. But for McKenzie, tough weekend with those couple of spills.
Yeah, a couple of crashes for Taz, and it's put him on the back foot. And Zaidi, obviously we've got a bit of time between now and Misano for him to try and make another step. He still races in the Asia Road Racing Championship and still does pretty well in that, but we're waiting to see that form really translate to World SBK.
Heading across the front row of the grid then, they are the three men who qualified on the front row in Superpole yesterday. They finished first, second and third in both races thus far, and they start in the same positions on the grid here in race two. Will we see any change to the pecking order to complete this Motul Czech round?